Awesome. Well, so Matt, aka Viking Scotsman, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm actually all right today, to be fair, considering last night last night's sleep was broken, but I'm all right actually. Considering I went to last night, I was sort of the night before. What day are we on? When
Tuesday, I
Tuesday,
believe.
Sunday night. I had a sleeping tablet to help me sleep because I hadn't slept in about 4 or 5 days. So I was like, I'll take one of these because I need to get some form of sleep at some point, or I'm going to start going even madder than I already am. And so then last night I was playing with Jigs and a few other friends, and my disassociation kicked in majorly, and I disconnected from the game and everything like that. And then the power tripped in the house, and that's what brought me back to reality. Was the power? The whole room just went dark, and I was like, "Why has it gone dark? Where's my game gone? What's happened?" And I couldn't remember anything for the last 5 minutes. So then that happened. I was like, "Right, I need to go to bed." Anxiety then kicked in about going to sleep, but I managed to actually get a couple of hours, so I'm actually doing all right today.
Awesome. I definitely want to kind of circle back to the dissociation at some point, but
Mm.
obviously you and I have had a couple of chats before, so I know the story. But so I'm not going to lead you any specific directions in that story because I want this to obviously be completely up to you as to where you
Yeah.
take that. So yeah, like talk us through for the sake of chat and the podcast listeners, like what has been your mental health journey so far?
So I could start if I start. So about me, I worked in the prison service now for 3 years. I can't give too much detail because the fact that I had to sign an NDA when I started the service.
Yeah.
So I can't give too much. So over the course of the time of me working in the prison service, I've been assaulted several times, like hit with a chair, rolling around in glass, nearly stabbed, assaulted, seen people do serious health self-harm. And then last year, COVID year, terrible for everybody last year. So to kick it off last year, my other half lost one of her close friends. And then we lost our firstborn baby girl in July. And then my other half's half sister took her own life. And then my gran ended up with cancer. And then we lost another family member just at the later stage of the sort of the year. And then through all that, we were sort of in constant talks with the hospital and getting information back as to what happened and things like that. So we did all that. We going through that process. And then around Christmas time, obviously, we had made plans to see family because Boris had went, "Yay, look, you can all go and see your families for 3 days." And we were in need of getting away from the rut that we'd been in for months of working, or I was back at work and my other half was stuck in the house and things like that. So we were excited. So that's when it really kicked in as well, that I wasn't coping too well with everything that had happened over the course of like the last 3 years. We then got hospital reports back saying that things had gone a bit wrong, that they'd made mistakes, which I've sort of spoke to you about.
Yeah.
And it just sort of, I think it just got to the point where it was just too much, which like the video that said earlier with the bridge, when you lose your job and there's like a heavy thing on it and eventually it piles up and the bridge just fell out from underneath me. And I was literally on my way to work one day, was in the car, I was about to step out of the car and I broke down. That was it. Kicked me to the curb. I was like, cool, all right. So I rang work, literally sat about 10 minutes away from work, just in the car to my manager going, "I can't come in today." And this was 27th of December, I want to say. So I've been chasing help since then. And last week, I finally got a mental health assessment done through my GP and was told that I have complex PTSD, which is different with the fact of standard PTSD, because standard PTSD is just one sort of specific issue that you can address, sort of just that one formality, and you can work on that one image, whereas complex is multiple situations that have happened over the course of time, and your brain takes turns of to which video it wants to play that evening.
Yeah.
It's basically like the shout out clip player we all have on Twitch. You just hit ! PTSD and it pops up with a random video.
Yeah.
So last week, the lady finally said to me, yes, it's complex PTSD. And I explained what the issues I was having. And she also said that I have dissociation disorder, which is a side effect from PTSD.
Okay.
And my sleep deprivation and the hallucinations, the visual hallucinations I get through the day is through just lack of sleep as well. So they're finally, I've had to do a few self-referrals, as the lady said, to Vita Minds. I think it's one of them, and Willow Tree that she recommended. Another change of medications coming and things like that. So there's steps now that are going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I was told, so I've just got to chase it up again tomorrow, but my GP's currently on leave. The mental health assessor that was doing it was her last day at work before she went on leave for 2 weeks. So everything was sort of like, yeah, we're going. And then it's like, okay, we're just going to take a pause for a minute. But I'm sort of trying to keep myself optimistic in the fact that as soon as these people come back from leave, the ball will be rolling again, and I can actually start getting some sort of help.
Yeah. How would you describe kind of your mental, I mean, this has been one very traumatic year for you. Yeah. And obviously being in the prison service, like I imagine traumatic probably from, let's maybe not say day one, but let's say lunchtime, day two, It's like it's not a place that is devoid of trauma. No. I'm sure there's never a dull moment, but what would you say your mental health was like before that? And also what was your kind of thoughts and attitude towards mental health before that?
So before, I'd had like one previous episode years before, and I was that typical sort of bloke where I just, my dad's an old Glaswegian man. I'm a Scotsman. Let's just get on with it, stuff it in my pocket, leave it for later, sod it all off, it'll be fine. And then when this all started, I'd gone through a course of CBT when the first assault occurred, because the prison service sort of made you go through it. Mm-hmm. But I was that sort of, therapy's not going to help. What's talking about it going to do sort of thing. And that was truthfully my mindset, was just that old school dealing with my dad too much sort of thing, that I've never seen that man show the iota of emotion apart from happiness and anger throughout my entire life. So that was my approach to just anything. So it was just literally like, shrug it off, it'll be fine. But now that I did the CBT 2 years ago now, I'm more inclined to sort of seek that sort of help, because it does do wonders just to talk, even if you're just venting and rambling and somebody's listening. Yeah. It helps massively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually think I'm this strange, weird person that believes that that shrug it off and man up and get on with it and stuff aren't 100% the worst things in the whole world. They're just usually delivered to people with no other tool in the toolkit.
Yeah.
And that's the thing as well, is that you'll probably find, and I mean, I say this because of from experience, like I obviously am a massive advocate for therapy. I'm a massive advocate for CBT. It's why I've had personal great experiences with CBT as a client, and it's why I'm studying it at present. Yeah. And it's because I want to start adding elements of that into what I do here. But actually, weirdly enough, on some days, it is a case of I don't think it's ever okay to say it to people you don't know, ever. And I think when you do say it to people you do know, it's got to be in context. But I think it's a case of if shrugging it off some days is actually the right answer.
Yeah.
Like, because some days actually the sitting with it and dwelling with it can be more harm than good.
Yeah.
And on other days, the sitting with it and dwelling with it is the right answer, and is the idea to sit there and pick through it. And it might be more harm than good in the short term, but in the long term, it's like especially when shrug it off is shown as the only response. Like, well, what happens on the day that you can't shrug it off, And I think it is important. I think particularly for anyone who's gone through experiencing both of those side of things, I think it is important to know that actually these are these are both valid approaches. For when, and obviously, you know, shrugging it off's okay for, like, honestly, right now, I've opened up a billion times on stream today about how I'm feeling right now. I definitely need to shrug off how I'm feeling.
Sometimes it just sits there and it's just a bit too heavy to shrug, and you think, I can shrug this off, and then you're just, and I started, like, today's obviously good because I've had a decent night's sleep before, and I can feel it as I progressively go through the days, because I can't take the sleeping tablets every night because they're highly addictive, and I've already had like 4 weeks of these things, but GP's only giving them to me on the basis that she knows I need to sleep. So as it progressively gets further on, my disassociation gets worse the more tired I get, which then affects my sleep, and it's just this vicious circle of constantly going round. So hopefully when the new medication comes, which the mental health lady said, oh, you shouldn't be on this, we need to put you on this, we need to up this, rah, rah, rah. And I was like, brilliant, cool, sounds good. She at least understands that the medication I'm currently on, even though I tell my GP, and my GP's brilliant, she's got that mental health side of knowledge.
Yeah.
That my GP possibly might have or might not. I don't know how in-depth GPs go into the mental health side of things, but this lady was literally like 20 minutes into the phone call. She was like, yeah, boom, you've got this. Boom, you've got this. We'll do this. You do this. I'll do this. And we'll catch up again this week. Yeah. And then she was on freaking holiday for 2 weeks.
And I suppose with, you know, the question of the stream today has been, what do you think the future of mental health is? And I honestly think that part of that is GPs being able to kind of make those assessments and being able to do those things quicker.
Yeah.
You know, like there is like, even though the NHS is strained, there is also God, am I about to lose my subcontract with the NHS by talking about this? Who knows? Do they listen to the podcast? Who knows? To be fair, it's like, it's not, the higher ups certainly don't, and the ones that are bloody getting me in, like, they're not probably going to be bothered about me saying this. There is, let's put it so. Most of what I do for the NHS is completely free, but some of it they pay me for. And I've been told that what I charge is nothing compared to what some of the other people within it charge. And like, some people even within it have said to me, you should just charge more because they're happy to pay it. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to take the frigging piss out of I'm not charging them more than I charge another corporation just because they are, you know, there are elements of the budget not going to plan. And there's also a certain degree of bloating, you know, like when I was doing and having this plasma thing done yesterday, there was me and one other person like giving plasma at the time. Cass is like probably saying to you, I thought I banned the word plasma. But there was like me and one other person in there at the time, and there was, I would say there was around 20 to 25 staff.
Yeah.
You know, there was a security guard, and then there was 2 receptionists. Then there was a multiple of the people who actually do the assessments, multiple of the people delivering the process. And like, I mean, I had like 3 or 4 staff members to myself to kind of chat to through the whole process, which was great because I had real conversation with face-to-face people that have 3-dimensional faces for the first time in forever. But I was sat there thinking, and I spoke to the person. I was like, you know, is it always this quiet? And she was like, some days we get a bunch of people in, but yeah, more often than not, it's like this. And it's like, it must be so hard to know that those resources that were there at that time probably could have been used somewhere else. And I mean, it's this big, huge machine with so many moving parts, but it's like, I've gone off on a full-on tangent here. Bring me back to
like you were saying, but like,
bring me back to reality.
With the question that sort of what's the future for you with mental health is the more the stigma is removed around mental health, the more awareness that people bring out to it, the more people that are going to start going to the NHS to it, the more strain that's then going to put on the NHS. On an NHS that's already currently strained and doing what they can to the best of their abilities. If you then add on the whole mental side of things, you've got to make sure that you're funding the resources into doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because as mental health does increase and the awareness does increase and things like that, then you've got to have that ready, available. I mean, it's taken me 2.5 months just to get to the point where I'm at now, where they've finally decided to start putting me forward for a mental health assessment, and it's still going to be 6 to 8 weeks before I start any form of therapy.
Yeah.
For it.
But
so,
and do you know the worst thing is that when you tell me that, I'm like, that's quick.
yeah.
That's quick compared to some of the stories I've heard. You know, 3 months is generally like 3 months even to get your initial assessment is been quick. You know.
Well, when I spoke to the GP, she literally said to me, "Oh, so I've referred you through to the crisis team, mental health crisis team, blah blah blah. They'll be there. They'll be with you within 2 weeks. That's usually their sort of timeline is 2 weeks." Mm-hmm. And I was a bit like, 2 more weeks, I got to wait now. 2 more weeks. Literally the next day I got a text message from the crisis team saying, "We'll be contacting you tomorrow at 12:30. I'm like, it's 48 hours. How do you go from telling me it's 2 weeks to like 48 hours? But yeah, and that was the struggle beforehand, was getting that help, was pushing forward that help. And was I like, am I saying the wrong things? Because I had 3 other assessments done before my GP took it forward. And one company that works for the prison service, I won't name drop so that people don't get toxic about it, literally point blank refused to give me any help because I didn't have enough what they call credits to get help, even though the crisis I was in at the time, basically no. And then the other 2 assessments were like, yeah, just go online and Google it. So if that was the case and it was as simple as me just Googling how to get help from my mental health, I would have done it already.
Yeah. Well, that's actually weirdly one of the things I'm currently trialing out on the stream. Hence the article today from the NHS of how to look. You know, what is the future of mental health? Whatever the stream question is, like from going forward, I'm going to ask Google and see what its top answer is, because like we might ask the question how to deal with depression, and then like we'll Google that and see what's coming up top, because it's like. Yeah, it's like how do we scale it up? And I don't sit here and presume that it's an easy task. I just sit here and know that more needs to be done. I don't always know what that more is. That my standpoint on it's always been, and I think this is why I'm so bloody exhausted at the minute, which is what more can I do? And that's I'm getting, and like almost the bloody John F. Kennedy speech, you know, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I guess I'm sat here being like, well, ask not what the NHS can do for you, but what can you do for the NHS? Yeah. And or what can you do for mental health? You know what? And that's the whole thing, is like the future of it. It's there are no easy, clear-cut solutions to this. So I think the way you've just said it then, in terms of, I'd just glanced past that thought you just had then, which was okay. The more people, the more we reduce the stigma, the more people will be ready to ask for help. But the more people are ready to ask for help, the more strain it's going to put on a system that's already strained. Like I think that is as soon as you say that, I'm like, yeah, that's really, really obvious. I've never thought about it that way before, weirdly, because obviously my brain's often thinking about it in a different direction. But it's so kind of obvious that I remember when I was doing my mental health first aid training, and I really should have this resource to hand somewhere, but there is. The Department of Work and Pensions, I believe, have this process where anyone who is employed or self-employed, they will get you a mental health assessment and a care plan put together over the course of 6 to 9 months worth of care, just to keep you in work. Like it's basically job is to keep people within the workforce, but no one knows it's there, and it's terribly advertised, but it's paid for by the government, by the Department of Work and Pensions, and it's like, again, we don't know that that's there. And it's like, and when I spoke to the people who were doing my mental health first aid training, I was like, why do people not know this is here? And they're like, the only answer we can probably give you, and off the record, obviously, is that, and here's me talking about it on a podcast. And if people put enough two and twos together, everyone on the podcast knows who I got my mental health first aid training from as well, because they've been on the podcast. But they're like, off the record, the only thing we can think of is that, the only thing we can say is that if more people knew about it, it wouldn't be able to perform, like it wouldn't be able to hit the deadlines and the schedule that it's aiming for. If right now it's undersubscribed, but they're able to give people these 6 months to even 9 months for people who need it. And I mean, you get a response within a day, you get a personalized response within 2, it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have a care correspondent assigned to you within a week. But then within 2 weeks, they're supposed to then start giving you information of where this is going to go and what support you'll have. You get 6 months worth of support, and for people who need more, they get an additional 3 months after it. And it's like, okay, but if that was to suddenly jump up in terms of how many people are applying for it, how would they be able to keep that? And they must obviously the same. They probably keep it so that if 10% more people came through, they'd probably keep it below capacity at all times as well. Because again, if you're operating exactly at capacity, then one more person coming through the door on all of that,
you're over.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, I don't know.
And that's it. Like as much as I would, and I talk about on my streams and on yours and everybody else's about my mental health, and the simple aspect that it doesn't matter if people want to hear it or if they take anything from it, but the fact that they're then aware of it means that someone else has got a bit more awareness of mental health.
Yeah.
Like, I don't advertise that I'm doing mental health or anything like that. I never have, because I am not in any way, shape or form a professional. I'm just someone that has PTSD and things like that. So if people do want to talk and bring it up, then I will. But even if it raises the awareness by one person each day or each week or each month, then it's raising that awareness. But the concern is if hundreds of people then start going, hey, look, I need help, the NHS will just, how will they cope with it, with the fact that it's taken 2.5 months for myself to get to this stage where having complex PTSD, dissociation and mental thoughts, so like constantly all the time, how's it taken that long to get this far? And if somebody just simply is the wrong word, but has depression as it is, but it's not too severe, waiting 3 months could make it continuously worse waiting that long.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing is as well that there's already a situation now where sometimes the NHS turns people away because they are not too serious or not serious enough.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's like these things do have to be triaged, which is why as soon as you said that, then I'm like thinking, okay, well, what we can usually get someone a doctor's appointment. It might only be a small amount of time, but if GPs and generally speaking, GPs don't have to. They don't have to do. And I think they have to. It's like there's one module requirement for mental health. There's one module requirement for nutrition. So it's a lot. There's a lot of box checking, and I know GPs that have gone off and trained as nutritionists on the side as well. I know GPs that have gone off and trained in mental health on the side as well. But that's more often than not, that's because that GP has a personal interest in that, and it's not something that they're supported through doing. It's something that they have to do on their own, basically off their own steam. But if a doctor is trained to notice various signs within that time frame, like when it comes to mental health, faster, I guess. I suppose, it's like we do need more GPs that have got the ability to kind of to pick up on these mental health things like early on, straight away, because that then allows them to then triage that person to the correct location sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's I don't know. That's I knew it would be a minefield, like bringing it up on the stream. Awkward Dream has just done me a favor and reminded me that I actually didn't cycle back around to the dissociation and weirdly asked the exact question that I wanted to ask. So that's really, really helpful. Did it take long for the dissociative symptoms to be identified or diagnosed by healthcare professionals, or was it only after the CPTSD diagnosis? And I suppose what I would like to know is, in terms of not just be diagnosed, at what point, because this is I didn't know about the dissociation until I saw you tweet about it earlier.
I didn't know about it, honestly. It was when the lady was asking me questions. So what was awkward? Did it take long? So the symptoms were apparently always there, but my GP, I don't think, had the knowledge. Don't get me wrong, I'm not slandering her. She's been brilliant. She's helped me out a lot since I first started seeing to her, but I think she's then realised it's a bit out of her knowledge base, the symptoms I've been showing. So we spoke to the mental health assessor, spoke to her about the situation. So she targeted the complex PTSD straight away. And then I was talking about the fact that I'll have mild amnesia from anything from half an hour to a couple of minutes to seconds, or I won't register something, or I'll forget how I've got somewhere, or something along those lines. And that's when she picked up on the dissociation disorder. That's when she picked up on it, was her basically putting together a couple of little bits. Because I could be sat there with my other half next to me, sat there chatting away, and I will zone into my own head, and all the thoughts will come in there, but it's almost like I've just turned off. Not a lot's going on.
Yep.
I've just turned off, and I'll be sat there. I'll have my phone in my hand, like I'll be watching Dave stream on a Saturday night, and it'll click and I'll go. And then my other half will be chatting, and then she'll tap me on the arm, and I'll like jump back into reality, like, what's happened? What have I missed? How long have I been gone for? And it could be a couple of minutes. She talks a lot, so it's generally not that long, so she'll hit me because I haven't responded. Or it can be like if we're watching a TV show that we're both really engrossed in, and it pops in, I can miss a whole episode. And I'll be like, I was watching that, but I wasn't watching that. So then she's really good. She's really understanding. So she doesn't mind having to watch the same episode twice every now and then. And then other times I would be sat by myself, and time will disappear. Next thing you know, she's walking in the front door, and it's been an hour, but I can't remember anything that's happened from that last hour.
Yeah.
So she has recommended I don't go walks by myself, just in case I end up in the middle of nowhere and completely lost. I'm not allowed to drive anywhere unless my partner is in the car, and I'm not allowed to drive for anything more than half an hour, which, to be honest, it's lockdown. I'm not really going that far anyway. So, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, going out for a walk by myself, it was just quite nice because I could just get outside, get a bit of fresh air. Only 10, 15 minutes, but I was outside. But now I can't even do that, just in case it kicks in and I end up wandering off. But what I found helps at the minute as well is if I have the radio playing, or if I have a stream playing in the background, sometimes especially if it's changing, if it's the same TV show like The Big Bang Theory that's just on repeat, and it's just playing that series out, there's not enough differentiation between the noises. Whereas the radio, because it will play like a chilled out song, and then it will play a rock song, and then it will play a dance track, it has that tendency to click me back in. So I usually end up having the radio on like 24. Right, as soon as I'm awake, I'm like, hey, put the radio on. There we go, and I can get on.
Yeah, just sort of a kind of a grounding or an anchoring process to kind of just, be constantly almost jolting you back into reality, I guess. Was the dissociation, was that something you ever experienced before all this?
No, never experienced it before. And it only literally started happening about a month or two ago, but I didn't really think anything of it. I thought I'm just zoning out, or I've had a nap, or I've fallen asleep, or something like that. And then when I explained it to the mental health lady, she was like, yeah, boom, that's what it is. Yeah. So hopefully she's got this new medication that I've got to be taking soon that will, I don't quite understand what it does, but it's meant to help me sleep. So her main focus is getting me to sleep again. Yeah,
understandable as well. Because that's the thing, is that obviously a lack of sleep is, well, I don't. Did you see the video about the boiling point that was on earlier? Yeah. So obviously I left all of the animation videos on while I ate a load of chicken, because that's how you stream, people, is you outsource yourself to yourself. But the boiling point one is, sleep's a prime example of that. So like if you're boiling tap water fresh from the tap, or if you're boiling water that's been pre-boiled in the kettle, it'll take a lot less time to boil the water with the exact same amount of energy using the pre-boiled water, because it's sat there like 5 degrees below boiling when you pour it into the pan. And that's the thing, sleep is one of those big ones that can really up the temperature on everything. Like, and a lack of sleep, or even for some people too much sleep, can create that situation where their body's already primed for stress. And the reason I thought the dissociation, because is that's sort of going back to the bridge analogy one, which is at some point, like some people will have had that through their entire life. Like I know people who've dissociated for as long as they can remember. I've, to my knowledge, only dissociated about 4 or 5 times to my knowledge, and it's always been extremely stressful experiences.
Yeah.
And well, the other one is that when I do dissociate, at first I was actually convinced at one point that it was the ex-partner gaslighting me, because she said I was somebody else, and I was acting as if I was somebody else, and I was talking about like people in my life that weren't in my life and all the rest of it. And it wasn't until, without knowing that, my current partner didn't know that had happened, and then she told me that I'd done the same thing, and I was like, oh. But
it's a really bizarre one, because it is, unless somebody actually tells you that's what it is, that you can usually sort of tell yourself when you're depressed, you can tell yourself when you're anxious or having a panic attack or you've got PTSD, you can almost self-diagnose in a way. But disassociation is just so complex in the fact that you don't know whether you're just drifting off or whether you're just having a nap or whether you've just zoned out of the world and chilled out for a bit. So when she told me, I was sort of like, oh, I didn't even realize that was a thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the funniest one I had so far was we went food shopping and I had a disassociation while I was bimbling around the shop. And then I got back from the shop. I'd snapped back into it because something came over the tannoy, so it wasn't a very long one. But I carried on doing my shopping, apparently, so I wasn't that fussed because I didn't have to think about it. But there was like 2 tubs of ice cream, a giant 2-litre bottle of Dr. Pepper. There was a bag of like frozen chips and everything. And I'm like, wait, what? When did I pick these up? But because my partner couldn't come into the shop with me because it's still one person at a time, she was like, I don't know, I thought you bought them. I'm like, oh, I can't remember putting these in the shopping trolley at all.
In the mental health industry, we refer to that as a snacksident.
Snacksident. I mean, it was 2 tubs of Ben and Jerry's, so I'm not really complaining.
Yeah, Dr. Pepper as well, not bad. I've not had any Dr. Pepper in a long, long time.
Clearly, I was craving it because when I got home, I was like, oh, do you know what? I really fancy a cold glass of Dr. Pepper now.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat about what do you think is the best way to approach a GP about mental health or how you've been feeling?
One thing I struggled with when it came to talking to my GP, in which my other half berates me about continuously when I'm speaking to anybody in regards to my mental health, is honesty.
Yep.
Even before I came on and had my client, like my chats with you, she was like, make sure you're honest with him. Make sure you tell him the truth. I'm like, okay. And subconsciously, I obviously thought I was, but then I look back and think, maybe was I 100% honest? Could I have like shared more? So I had enough by like 2 months of constantly trying with the GP and being knocked back. So I turned around and said to her, look, this is what's happening. I'm having dark thoughts about hurting myself or not wanting to be here. I'm having hallucinations for the day. I'm not sleeping. I'm literally just let everything out that was on my mind. Like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, at least I've done something and I've been honest with myself about it. And this has taken my partner like months of every phone call with my doctor of going, tell the truth, be honest. And I honestly thought I was at the time. And that's when the mental health kicked in. That's when she turned around and said, cool, right, mental health crisis team, they'll be in contact within 2 weeks. I think I was underselling myself.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult sometimes because it is really hard to be honest, because you think, there was a part of me that said, I don't want to be a burden, but my GP's there. And there's just this internal battle of rock, hard place, put me in the middle. Do I want to be a burden? Do I want to get myself help? So my other half berating me into telling the truth, I think was enough of a step for me to just word vomit all over my GP on the phone. And what helps with them as well is they've got an online service. So you can type out a form. Yeah, it's your standard, tick this box, but there's a big box, like 5,000 words that you can describe what's going on. So if you're not even comfortable saying it over the phone, I can type it all out the day before, like blah, 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 blah. And then she then gets that form and she reads it out and goes, is this how you're still feeling?
Yeah.
So that helped as well, because I felt like I could be a bit more honest just typing it out or sending a text.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, that's something I've actually helped people with in the past is I've outright had a person tell me everything. And I'm like, look, seriously, even if you think it's not worth bringing up, like tell me everything. We type it up into a letter, and I'm like, right, give this to your doctor. Because especially when it comes to anxiety and stuff, people often, not just anxiety, actually, avoidance can be such a huge thing like that. It's I used to always get really annoyed of the fact that how long it'd take me to get an appointment. My depression, as everyone has seen, it comes and goes, and it goes in waves, and it's unpredictable as to how long it's going to be there for and all the rest of it. So I'd often want to be able to see the doctor when it's at its worst. But more often than not, by the time I get the appointment, or particularly by the time I got the appointment with the psychologist, which is usually like a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months after I spoke to the doctor, then by that point, I'm feeling okay again.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like that I can only really tell a person how I'm feeling right now. So I would often then be like, so that was why with bipolar, one of the things I have to do whenever I'm going for like a med evaluation or anything like that is I have to do a mood diary for 2 months, which the psychiatrist actually then reads. And basically I have to map where my mood is in terms of like, you know, the kind of the scale of it over the course of a couple of months. And that's, but what I say to people is like, getting like, now, if I was to go in when I was feeling like manic, I'd be like, no, I'm all good. I'm on top of the world. Everything's fantastic. I don't even need to be here. What's the point? And again, unless the doctor is particularly keen on seeing between the lines on this one, I'm probably not going to get the help that I need. Yeah. Now, with most mental health conditions, a person can feel all fired up, can say to their friends or can say to their favorite mental health streamer, "Hi everyone," they can come and tell that person exactly how they're feeling, and then when they go to the doctor, there's almost like this avoidance thing. I don't even want to call it deliberate. I want to call it protective. Yeah. Mental health has this annoying ability to protect its existence. You know, like depression protects itself from being treated. Anxiety protects itself from people getting anywhere near to be able to help it. So it's like, you know, you go and see the doctor and it's like, no, I'm okay. You know, again. And it's like, and this is the thing in mental health first aid training, and in suicide prevention training, in both of them, we're taught to look for signs. And sometimes I'll see signs that aren't even there. But actually, I'd rather inquire into something that isn't there than neglect to inquire into something that is there. You know, But again, we're going back to the doctor only having that sort of 15, 20 minutes. So what I get people to do is I get them to write it all down. And then if they get in there and they can't remember, or the brain fog comes in, panic kicks in, or shyness kicks in, social anxiety kicks in, all of these different things can all kick in. You get a different doctor than you used to see in that day, whatever it might be. There's so many different ways it can go wrong. But if you've got that list there and you take that list with you, you can either refer back to it, or you can literally hand over and sit there and let them read it. And it's like people, but the big thing is like, we're humans, we're not cars. The doctor can't come in like a mechanic, open the bonnet and find out what's wrong with it. Yeah. Like they only go off what we tell them, especially with mental health. With physical health, it's a little bit different. There's metrics they can test.
Yeah, they can't just crack the head open and go, oh, bit of this and a bit of that. There you go.
No. And, you know, even if they could and they can check out your neurotransmitter levels and all the rest of it, there's actually still no direct correlation. Like obvious, like someone can have the neurotransmitters of a depressed person and not be depressed, you know. It's like, it's not all, so it's and
it is, like you said, all dependent on the time you speak to your doctor as well. Like you could have a really severe depressive episode and think, oh, I need to speak to my doctor. 48 hours later, or even half an hour later, you can be plodding along thinking, oh yeah, I'm doing all right now. I must have just had a down bit. Let's not talk about it. We'll just crack on and see if it happens again.
Well, the absolute worst anxiety attack I've ever had in my entire life, and the only anxiety attack that's ever taken me to hospital, it passed while I was waiting to see a doctor.
Yeah.
And it's like, I never discharged myself, left, everything. And as soon as the anxiety attack was gone, I was like, I'm all right again now.
Should we get a takeaway?
Because I didn't want to pay the parking prices to be in the hospital. I was parked in Tesco's anyway, so I did go. I think I got a meal deal. I can't remember exactly, but I know I went into Tesco's because I was parked at the 24-hour Tesco's, and I went and got some food and then drove home.
And that's just the thing, isn't it? Mental health, like you break a leg, is there.
Yeah,
it stays there until you've definitely got it treated. Like even if you ignore it, your body is still going to heal itself eventually. It might not be correct, but it will eventually heal you. Whereas mental health isn't something that you can simply address. You can't see it under an x-ray. You can't go, well, this is a problem, isn't it? It's not a simple fix like a broken leg could be, or something along those lines, if you understand, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%.
Whereas everything, we have to tell them everything that is going on within our heads. What's going on? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? And like I said previously, growing up with an old Glaswegian father that literally showed no emotion at all, then having to sort of open up about mine it's like, well, this isn't what my dad would do. My dad would probably just crack on, get on with his day, go and tinker with a motorbike, go and paint a room, or go and have a glass of wine or a bottle of beer or a whiskey or something like that. So that's what was the biggest struggle for me, was breaking that barrier, breaking that stigma myself, that not that he'd intentionally created it.
Yes.
Now that he knows that I'm getting help and stuff like that, he's very supportive of it. And he's like, oh, good, I'm glad you're doing all right. And he's never been against it. He's never said, oh, you're soft, blah, blah, blah. He's like, get the help you need. But he's just inadvertently created the stigma in my own mind. So luckily enough, I've managed to sort of push through that barrier that he's almost made and get myself the help. And he's just, considering how much of an and when I say old school Glaswegian, I mean he grew up in like a council flat, like a multi-story block in a really rough area of Glasgow. So he's an old school hard Glaswegian boy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's I think that he'll have been through his own adversity in his life, and will have had to just get on with it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to then not put that onto other people. Like I've confessed before now about how because I had to kind of just get on with my bullying and stuff in school, and by get on with it I mean develop an eating disorder. I say I just got on with it, but there was like not a lot that could. There was just not a lot that could be done. Back then. Yeah. It was a cycle of if I ever talked to anybody about the bullying. First of all, my dad put me down about it because I was 6 foot by the time I was 12. So he was like, "Have you seen the size of you?" And it's like, "Yeah, okay, Dad. Safety in numbers and all that." But
yeah, well, I was the same. I was 6 foot. My brother was 6 foot. So when it came to bullying or anything like that, and if we did, my dad was like, "You're legit taller than me. Like, go and do
because that's all it's about, isn't it?"
But I never sort of took that turn. My brother, on the other hand, took my dad, meaning literally, went into school the next day, so got bullied, and turned around and punched the dude in the stomach so hard the kid threw up.
Right.
So it's sort of like my dad went from like, just do what you got to do, to like, yeah, okay, don't punch them that hard. Don't resort to this.
I think the funny thing for me was I only ever retaliated literally twice in 4 years of high school, because in the 5th year of high school I didn't need to retaliate. I moved to Southport and I had a Scouse accent and a shaved head. And no one bullied me in year 11.
I think my way of dealing with it was I just left school. That was me. I think I left when I was 15, and my dad gave me the option. He's like, you stay in school or you get a job. I was like, sound, I'll get a job.
Yeah, it's like if you get the option of either to stay in school or get a job, where are you applying? Yeah. What job do you want? But yeah, so I mean, if you look at my actual attendance, is like my attendance was like 32% in year 10. Because of that, because like literally I was in this cycle of being bullied, my dad not believing me, my mum like her only answer was really kind of talk to the head and all the rest of it. Now, obviously, it was the whole cycle of you speak to the teachers, snitches get stitches. Not that we had that expression back then, because that'd be far too tame for Anfield in the 90s anyway. I'm going to fucking knock you out, you magnobbet. But there we go. We've swore on this. It wasn't me swearing, it was Scouse Dave swearing. But yeah, like, and opening up about it to teachers literally got you beaten even further. So cause I then had to deal with that. But then that weirdly, up until kind of like later in life, I then had this period in life once things got good in year 11, and everybody kind of liked me. By comparison, the stuff I was going through there was not as bad.
Yeah.
So therefore, I didn't really. I am one of the most bloody. Most of the time, optimistic people on the face of the planet and hopeful people on the face of the planet, despite the crap I've been through, which is bizarre, really.
I think the more crap people have gone through in their life, the more optimistic people they are, because they've experienced what it's like to be in that part that's really bad. Try not to swear.
Shit.
They've been through that part of their life that's really bad and they've really struggled. So when it comes to the other side of that, or they've learned coping mechanisms and they're living with whatever it is that's on their mind, they're so much more optimistic about it because they've been to that spot. They've reached the bottom of the bottle or wherever it is they've gone to. And it's like, well, today in comparison isn't as bad as it was 5 years ago, isn't as bad as it was 5 weeks ago. Yeah. And that's what I think brings out the optimism in as many people that have experienced mental health.
Yeah. 100%. I think where that goes wrong is that only works within the individual. And then like I would say that so people who go through a hell of a lot then have that comparison for themselves, and that works within their own life. It doesn't work when we compare it to other people who've gone through other things. If someone else has gone through something worse than you, it doesn't work. It's like, and it's the same as like then. But the problem is that, and this was the point where I kind of went wrong myself. Is like throughout that journey, it's like, okay, that was all well and good when I didn't have a position in this world of authority or anything like that over anybody. And the first person I got authority over was my eldest, Sam. You know, it's like, because I'm in a position. I was never a manager in work or anything like that. Never aspired to be. Can't be bothered organising people. The mental health marathon, organising people part of it, not so fun. Having the conversations, amazing. But it's like
a PA, Dave. Need a PA.
I know, honestly. But it's like I think a lot of people then go through. You need to kind of go beyond, like there's almost stages to it. I've been through a lot, therefore I'm going to be okay as long as I don't go through anything that's bigger than what I've already been through. Yeah. Then there can become a stage. Not everyone goes through this stage, but it can become a stage where it's like, I've been through a lot. What I've been through is bigger than what this person's talking to me is about. So why the hell's this person, like, if I've got through all of that? First of all, let's rewind back to what me getting through all of that was actually like. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I'm getting the crap beaten out of me. It's okay. I'll put on a brave face and be happy about it. It was, I will lock myself in my bedroom, not speak to anybody for years, develop an eating disorder, learn how to paint models. That was quite good. But because there wasn't as many video games back then. You know, I'd 100% of Zelda 3, 100% of Super Metroid, and then what you do, you start them on a fresh file and see if you can do them faster. But it's like, that's weird how like people get into that. And I was totally guilty of this, getting into that position where it's like, right, well, like, you know, almost becoming that person that says, you know, just get on with this. I said it to my son, and I'm that's like one of the few things I'm actually ashamed of, and I've made amends for since, but is the fact that I said it to him. That's not bullying. Like, what I went through is bullying. And I'm like, oh my God, like people have grown since then. All right. But, and then you got to get past that and just to realize, you know what, it doesn't, like, there's a very big difference between comparison and perspective. Comparison is where we compare what we've been through to what other people are going through, or vice versa, right? Whereas perspective is I've lived through this, and therefore actually by my own perspective, this other thing doesn't feel as big or as much.
Yeah.
The only problem is with all of that is that we can, and this is kind of like the worst thing. What is the future of mental health? In my opinion, the future of mental health is 8 billion people who've all been through some form of being broken at some point in their life, reaching out to the other 8 billion people who, because they understand that we've all been broken, and not turning around and saying we're all in the same boat, we've all been broken, and being dismissive about it, genuinely caring for the other person. And you know, the funny thing is, there's an expression about like something, I think it's like hard times create hard men create soft times create soft men, or something like that, right? It's a little bit, I'm not 100% on board with it. However, it is kind of, the thing is, for the best people out there with mental health care are the ones who've been through the crap. If we eventually get to a position where none of us go through any crap, which I don't think is possible, but that's a side note entirely. But if we ever get to a position where we're all the most lovely human beings to each other in the face of the planet, and there's no meanness, there's no inequality, and there's no injustice and all the rest of it, then we'd lose the people who are capable of empathizing. and now we've got no one who can empathize, and then everything's fine for like a generation or two while we're in utopia. And then someone comes along and says something mean, and we're like, oh, actually, have you ever seen Demolition Man?
Yes, I have.
So in Demolition Man, like, oh my God, I can't believe I've never made this connection before. I'm so excited right now, because this is like the shit.
There we go.
Shittest,
Dave's off.
Finally, I knew you'd do this to me. Forget the 2 coffees I've had today. You are human caffeine. So Demolition Man, right? For those of you not who've seen it, first of all, go and watch Demolition Man. It's great. It's got Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock in it. What more? And Wesley Snipes. What more could you possibly want from the film? But ultimately, they get rid of crime. And there's a future version. They go into the future, and basically they've got rid of crime through various policing methods that probably wouldn't work. John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit for violation of the verbal morality statute. Not that I've seen that film a million times or anything. But basically, then Wesley Snipes' futuristic criminal gets released, and is the type of criminal that because the cops haven't had to deal with that type of criminal since the 90s. And whenever it is in 2060 or whatever, it's wherever it's set. It's probably set in 2021, isn't it?
It's going to kick off next month.
Well, I was going to say the future of Back to the Future already happened, but I
Am Legend happens this year as well.
So I Am Legend happens this year. Interesting. Watch out for vampire dogs. But yeah, so the cops now no longer know how to deal with it, so they have to unfreeze John Spartan, Sylvester Stallone's character, because they've got an old-fashioned criminal. They need an old-fashioned cop, and that is ultimately that right there is the greatest analogy that's ever been made for mental health care. The end. Because if mental health is truly and utterly cared for to the level it needs to be, then there'd be no problems anymore. And then if there's no problems anymore, there'd be no one equipped to handle the problems eventually. And then if there's no one equipped to handle the problems, what happens if a problem comes up?
Then people have to relearn how to deal with the problems, and the cycle's there.
For all we know, it could have already happened. There could have been a utopic period.
Yeah, where the dinosaurs were roaming the earth.
The dinosaurs had great mental health.
They were all just like food.
And then a meteor came along, and they didn't know how to handle that because they were a bunch of snowflakes. Because if only they'd had like anti-meteorite weapons, but no, they lived in too much happiness.
So there was a question I seen from Brittle Lion asking, what actually is an anxiety attack and what's it like? So this one piqued me because of the simple fact that everyone's anxiety attacks could be completely different to the person next to them. Like my anxiety attack to me is I will clench my jaw really badly. I will tense up. It depends on the severity. Sometimes I'll get chest pains, which the first time that happened, I legit thought I was having a heart attack. But it wasn't. It was legit just the tensity of my whole body at the time. Yeah. But then I used my little thumb and finger technique that a certain mindset coach taught me, which helps tremendously. But I don't know what Dave's anxiety attacks are like, but mine focuses mainly a lot on me clenching my jaw, and I have my purple stress ball. So
mine's green. don't know what it is though.
Mine just sits underneath my microphone, and it's usually there at times just before you come on a Twitch stream to talk to Dave.
I've got a purple stress.
Among us.
Anxiety attacks are different from person to person. Generally speaking, there is some things that tend to be there for a lot of people, and anxiety attacks for me. And this is why I can't have too much caffeine, because an anxiety attack feels the same as too much caffeine. So my brain can sometimes go into a little bit of a fight or flight mode if my caffeine levels are too high. But generally speaking, an anxiety attack for me is racing thoughts, not particularly good ones, obsession over the worst case scenario, everything that could go wrong, heightened breathing, shallower, and my thoughts are going faster than my words can get out usually. So my words start speeding up to try and keep up with the thoughts, and I also become extremely resistant to whatever the people are saying to me, which is a really annoying. I said before that mental health conditions have a tendency to self-preserve. My anxiety can be like that, and the annoying thing is the only person that seems to know how to talk to me like that's about that is me. So and I'm not in the position to be able to talk myself down to it. So weirdly enough, I may or may not have an anxiety relieving thing on my phone that is me speaking to me.
I have an anxiety thing on my phone that's you speaking to me before I go to sleep.
And so the fact is that my thoughts will go faster. I'll generally the joke is we end up in the whole palms are sweaty, vomit on a sweater or any mom's spaghetti, because my palms will get sweaty, I'll get clammy. Now this is why when I said I had 3 anxiety attacks yesterday when I was giving blood, they're not really anxiety attacks. I would call them adrenaline attacks maybe, because they feel completely differently. I feel as if I'm dizzy, I'm going to pass out, and all the warmth in my head just drains. Whereas with an anxiety attack, the warmth in my head is almost unbearable. It's like the temperature and pressure of my head, it feels like it's a furnace that's going to pop when there's an anxiety attack there. And it feels like that's why. So when Asta actually came in the other day, who's just popped in against now, when I did that meditation on Saturday, I basically said about all these different fires that were going on all around your brain. That's the easiest way for me to describe it. So when actually we talked through that, we were talking about blowing out, using your breath to blow out each individual fire that was in there. And that's a lot of times what an anxiety attack can feel like. The main one though is usually the breathing. So that's where I start. I start with the breathing, because if I can control the breath even by a tiny amount, then I begin to be able to bring everything down. So you can't, the sweating and the heart rate and all the rest of those things, when you control the breath, they start to reduce as well. And the problem is with any form of anxiety, regardless of what you're feeling, if your feelings are completely different than what I've just described, they're still working on something that's called a positive reinforcement loop. So basically the feelings happen, and then the thought is attached to the feeling, noticing, okay, I'm feeling this, therefore I'm anxious, which then leads to actions, and then those actions then lead to the thoughts exacerbating, which lead to. So the easiest way I can describe this, if you think about public speaking, you go out there, you start talking really fast because you're just trying to get through it because you're anxious. And if you're anxious, what your brain wants to do is get through it and be out the other side of it. So and this is why actually there's an expression I like, which is slow down to speed up. Because if I talk fast, I make more mistakes. If I make more mistakes, I start doubting my own performance. If I'm doubting my own performance, I get even more anxious. But instead of that making me slow down and actually make my points better, it makes me speed up and try and get through it faster, which then loops around and causes the whole thing. Health anxiety is a prime example of this. If a person feels like that something's going to make them sick, they then suddenly become much more in tune with the feelings in their own body. At any given day, your body has feelings that you're not even being aware of. So your digestive system, you kind of just let it sit there and get along with it. But if you've got health anxiety and you then tune into what your digestive system you do, and you'll be like, okay, that started doing that now. Now, the thing is that stress, that you're now stressing about the fact that your digestive system's doing that, stress and your digestive system work together not in a good way always. It's basically you've got two things called your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. When you are stressed and ready for battle, your body isn't thinking, I need to have a poo. It's like there's a dinosaur.
It'd be a bit awkward, really, wouldn't it?
There's a Viking Scotsman invading. It's not thinking, oh, I'll just have a little bit of a dump first, and then and then I'll run away from him because he's gonna I don't know, he's gonna pillage, but also he's gonna do it whilst slinging some haggis around or something, whatever. He's gonna pillage, but playing bagpipes. I'm going to put, my little neuro raid where she's got an axe in her hand as she comes in when I get my raid alert. I might make an alternative with bagpipes now. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. They are different for everyone, and the good news is that if you're asking, you've probably never experienced one. So,
mine mainly starts in my jaw because I can feel it like clench. Mm-hmm. It's the worst thing. My GP's going to hopefully sort something out about getting a gum shield.
Yes.
Because just with the pure clenching, and then if I'm having anxiety subconsciously when I sleep, I have a tendency to get shouted at by my missus because I'm grinding the living daylights out of my teeth.
Yeah.
So I'm hopefully going to go down the route of getting a gum shield or teeth guard sort of thing that I can put in while I sleep so that I don't end up walking around with gums by the time I'm 32.
Yeah. So, okay, we've already gone a little bit over, which is fine. But as long as you're fine for time, it is actually. It's fine. It's just fine. Just stay.
I'm happy. I've got no plans, so I'm good.
What are some of the, obviously you're getting a lot of extra care and stuff from the doctors and stuff now, and there's more coming, which is great. What are some of the things that for you personally help? And this isn't a plug for me, by the way. So you've already.
Well, there is obviously you. There is definitely you. But do you know streaming? As mad as it sounds, streaming is something. As much as every time I've streamed for ages now, literally done it for a while. Still get anxiety about hitting that go live button every freaking day I'm going live. I'm like, just do it, get it over and done with. But it's just chilling out and just chatting away to people and things like that. Maybe it's the social aspect of it that I enjoy, or just the interaction, or the fact that I have a laugh. But streaming has been one of the biggest things that's helped me. And that's what's kept me probably sane over the last 2.5 months of not being at work. Yeah. Is the fact that I had the routine, and I said to myself, I'll do it this time, this day. And then it gives me that sort of routine. It gives me something to do. It gives me something to work on. And then my other half is literally my anchor, to be fair. Because as I came into the stream, was it a couple of weeks ago? Yeah. Having really bad thoughts. And I rang my missus at work and was like, look, you got to come home. And she's like, okay. Literally, she rang me from the car about 10 minutes later. And it's not easy just leaving a prison service job because you're allocated to a certain spot with a certain amount of staff. So it's not an easy feat of just like ditching work and coming. Like if it was an office job and you had your own paperwork in your own section, it's fine. You could sort of leave it, catch up with it tomorrow. But she was just like, yeah, screw you guys. I'm out. See you later. So yeah, my other half has probably been the biggest help for me when it comes to my mental. If it wasn't for her, I don't know where I'd be at this point.
Yeah.
And she's been fighting tooth and nail with work to get me help. And a lot more I'd given up on work and still have at this point getting me any assistance. So the longer I'm off, it used to bother me being off because thinking I'm missing work, it's not great. But now, because of the help that hasn't been given, I'm sort of like, well, do you know what? If you ain't going to help me, I ain't going to rush back to help you guys up.
Fair enough.
So, and she's been fighting. She's been like shouting at the deputy governor of the prison and things like that to try and get me some form of assistance. So she's probably been the biggest rock I've had since it all started. And she's considering she's gone through the same, well, she hasn't had the assaults because for some reason prisoners have moral standards and won't hit women. But hey, I'm 6'2" and fair game. So she's not been through that, but she went through the same situation with the baby. So, and her half sister, her friends, my gran and stuff like that. So we've been through it, but she's obviously had a lot more mental health support. She's been through EMDR. She's been, she's now going through her second lot of bereavement therapy and things like that as well. So, but yeah, she's been solid, absolutely solid, and she still makes me laugh. She's still trying to get used to trying to ease me out of my dissociation disorder more than just slapping me on the arm. She's getting better. It's usually just like I'll be sat there, she'll be talking, and she'll just like flick around at me and catch me in the arm. I'm like, what happened? What happened? And she's like, I'm like, can you just try and like tone it down with bringing me out of these things, please? Because it's such a shock. Like my heart rate will then be racing, and I'm like, oh. And she's like, sorry. And I'm like, just ease it. So now she's getting a bit better, where she strokes my arm instead of just punching me. Be like, come here, I'm here.
Amazing. I'll do a shout out for you once we're back on the other screen, because then we get the lovely kind of the random clip generator.
Please don't.
You're gonna have to. But is there, if anyone wants to kind of like follow you, check out what you do, where's the best places to do it?
Twitter and Twitch.
And on Twitter, you are
the Scott Viking.
The Scott Viking.
Yeah. For some reason, it wouldn't let me put one T. It wouldn't let me put the Viking Scotsman. Apparently, somebody already had that. So
how dare they? Yeah,
no. But I went and found the account, and it's got like no followers and doesn't follow anyone. So I'm going to hopefully get in touch with them. So yeah, if you like me cursing all day while I stream and shoot zombies, then feel free.
Which is a perfectly and utterly appropriate form of therapy, as far as I'm concerned.
It's actually quite therapeutic. Vent your anger on them instead of anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. Good outlet. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think we've pretty much covered as much as we possibly can.
Excellent.
Is there anything else you would like to ask?
No, I think we're all good. Can we get, obviously, as always, I would say, can we get a bunch of love up in the chat for Matt? !love. We'll, even if you're a sub or not, we'll get you access to a whole bunch of emojis. And to everyone who's listening on the podcast and doesn't know what the hell that is, as I always say, come and check out a stream sometime. But as I always finish off, I would say, if you master the mind, you can master anything. And going back to the one thing that we said today, sometimes mastering your mind means getting some help from the doctors. But if you need help doing that, get together what you want to say to them. Be honest, be open. Make sure you tell them everything, even the stuff that you might not think is relevant, because actually they are trained to know whether these things are relevant or not. And it might be the piece of the puzzle that you keep from that person might be the piece of the puzzle that actually helps you get the specific help that you need.
And I can vouch for that. Be as honest. As much as it's difficult to do it, be as honest as you possibly can with GPs, mental health advocates, because they will pick up on stuff that you didn't even think was relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Matt, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.